I said, empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water.
It's about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward.
Join movement expert Aaron Alexander as he dives into the minds of the foremost innovative healthcare thinkers on their approach to optimal health and wellness. Align Podcast.
Welcome back to the Align Podcast. My name is Aaron Alexander. Today's tremendous episode was with my friend, Mr. Daniele Bolelli. Daniele he's got to be the most badass, potentially one of the most renowned history professors in the world. That might be, I don't know enough about history professors to say that, but he's definitely up there on the charts. He hosts the History on Fire podcast. He also the Drunken Taoist podcast. He's the writer of many books. He actually is a history professor as well in college here in town, and he's awesome. This conversation spans all sorts of interesting wormholes in the realm of history and psychology and movement and things of that sort, and really great. Really value Daniele's presence in the world, and hope you guys enjoy this conversation. Thanks so much for tuning in to the website alignpodcast.com, ALIGN podcast.com. On there you can start the 5-day movement challenge, and people have been digging that. It's 5 simple videos, breaks down a lot of the stuff that I go on and on about into simple how-tos. So hope you guys dig that. If you got any kind of neck stuff, back stuff, hip stuff, those videos will be helpful. I think we are just going to say thank you to our show sponsor, Ned. They are awesome. Some of the highest quality CBD oils that I have come across. It's all single source. It's all cold extracted, which apparently the majority of the oils that we are getting are not, which so that's kind of a bummer. But this is made with the utmost intention and respect towards highest quality product. So Ned, you can get 15% off if you go to helloned.com/align. helloned.com/align. If you guys got experiencing any kind of like head stuff, sleep stuff, anxiety, things like that, it's shown to be really good with. So hope you enjoy that. 15% off. Check it out. I think we're good. I'm heading to Sedona, Arizona in like 20 minutes, and we're going to go out there and do like some sweats and some, I don't know what, all sorts of interesting desert ceremonial things. So I'll be sure to keep you guys posted on how that goes when I get back. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks for telling your friends. Thanks for doing you. All right, here we go. Pow.
Align Podcast.
I think I have a deficit of fiction in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the thing with fiction that's tricky is that it needs to be high level. Because, if something is not high level, enjoyable, but there's good, useful information in it, well, you still read it, right? Because it's like, okay, it's not the most fun book I've ever read, but there's useful info. Fiction, if it's not fun, what's the point? It needs to be... So to me, average quality fiction is crap. It needs to be exceptional, that inspires you and makes you happy to have read it. Otherwise, like, why am I reading it?
Yeah.
So the bar is higher to me. It's like, it's harder to get good fiction done than... Because there are a bunch of books that I read that are not fun to read. I don't per se enjoy them, but they contain info that are very valuable to my life. So that's a great book. Then it's fine.
Is there any standout fiction that helps?
Yeah, there's not a lot. Like I love. I don't know if you ever read Tom Robbins.
I'm familiar with that, but
he wrote Still Life with Woodpecker, Jitterbug Perfume, Cowgirls Get the Blues. He's fucking hilarious. He's such a good writer. Like I could read him reciting the menu and I would be happy. He's like, he's just a fun writer to read. Yeah. And so I dig him a lot.
I'm reading this non-fictional book called Play right now, because there's one in the chapter in the upcoming book. There's a play chapter. And one of the things that I mentioned in there that I thought was really cool was fireworks came before cannons. And so in China they created fireworks, like, cool, we're playing, this is dope, wow, and like, oh, there's some other utilities to this.
I guess we could blast some walls with it and kill a few. Yeah, totally.
It's just interesting if you give yourself the spaciousness for your mind to wander, all of a sudden you can attach on to these new, interesting, potentially useful ideas.
And I think you said it, space for your mind to wander, right? For me, it's like I grew up I grew up at a time when, in Italy in the 1980s, there was very few TV channels. I had, it wasn't until I was 10 years old that I even had access to a VCR. There's no internet. There's a bunch of time you're bored. And so I would open these books and just start letting my mind wander and like maybe spend an hour reading this book for kids where there are all these drawings and images that you have. And so then allows your mind to fill in the blanks, to imagine what that story is like, to spend a bunch of time on your own just thinking about making up stories in your head, right? And that's such a crazy exercise for the imagination that when you have 10,000 easily available source of entertainment, you're not going to do, because why would you? You can have fun in a much easier, faster way. You don't need to work that hard for it, right?
Yeah.
So it's an interesting trade-off, because of course I wouldn't be like, oh, go back to the old days and live in a cave. That's not fun per se. But at the same time, there are values in, there's something valuable in sitting there and really, the only entertainment you get is what you come up with with your mind, So it's a trade-off, like anything.
Yeah, there's another. It's interesting to me that you can kind of play your body like a tool to access different thoughts. So there's it's called convergent versus divergent thinking. I apologize for being so excessively non-fictional, but this is interesting. So when you from walking, moving around, and dancing, and all that stuff, it's actually shown to help with outside of the box.
Of course,
divergent thinking.
Absolutely.
And then when you're focused in, it's so says the studies, which I don't think need to be completely accurate. It's better for like more accessing information you already have, which is kind of fascinating. But then I think there's also something to like a flow state with writing where it kind of breaks that rule. Yep. If it is a rule.
Yep. I think it's both, like everything. You got both sides of the equation, make up who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. What about, so do you have any kind of like tools for creativity? Lighten your fire, stimulating your...
A lot of time, I think reading good stuff, like reading good story, watching good stories, that kind of stuff get your mind running, having a model in that sense. Like if I just watch an awesome episode of some great TV show, that gets my creative juices going. If I read something inspiring and powerful, if I listen to some music that lights up some emotional things inside of me, all those things tend to get my imagination, they jumpstart it, everything starts flowing after that.
What are you teaching in history these days?
I teach U.S. history, Native American, and history of religions.
Cool.
But, the beauty of doing instead history on fire is that I can pick any topic I want, regardless of whether it fits in these ones or not, and run with it, and study and just get into it. And I kind of dig the freedom that doing the podcast gives me, because I can pick any topic in history. I'm not limited to these ones.
Yeah. Do you have a sense of how long you want to stay teaching?
I think...
Is that something that's like a passion thing that you want to continue doing, or is it something that you would...
I wouldn't mind doing it less. I enjoy going there and meeting people and hanging out and chatting about these things. It's fun. I wouldn't want to do 6 courses a semester. I wouldn't mind doing 2 courses a semester, So it's like I still would like to do it, but just I don't want to drive all the time. I want to start cutting it down, bringing it down to being on campus just 1 day a week or 2 days a week. That's good.
Yeah.
More than that is more like I got to do it, not that I want to. But I think if I can bring it down to that, I think it's a sweet spot.
I think there's an interesting sweet spot or balance there of actually keeping the one-on-one human contact time.
Absolutely.
Like the dream for a lot of people, especially living in Southern California, is like the laptop lifestyle or whatever. Having a laptop saddle on top of your nuts, like destroying your testosterone levels and all this stuff. And it's just like you're getting consumed by this screen, and then within that, there's this reward because you can make a lot more money because you can potentially communicate to like 1 million people instead of like 19. But then there's this health, kind of like spiritual something. There's this value out of actually like going into the classroom and having that connection with people.
Absolutely. I dig
It's
both.
really confusing.
That's why I think you need both. It's like one in alternative to the other is like, there are limitations that come with both models. But if you can take the best of each and figuring out exactly what the right percentage is for you, if you are maybe in a phase of your life, you want more of the face-to-face.
Right.
Maybe in a different phase of your life, you can do it less. I think you need both. That's just the bottom line. but to different degrees, and those degrees change over time.
Yeah.
Like right now, I can do a little less of the face-to-face, but I still want to do it. I don't want to give it up completely. That's why, like, even if I were to make a bunch of money doing other things, I would still like to go in the classroom once in a while and have that personal face-to-face contact. Is a completely different kind of communication, a different kind of energy that goes into circulation.
Right. Is there anything that stands out for you that you've learned from studying history that you can bring into the present moment?
I think history is great too. I mean, it teaches you about human nature like nothing else, because you see what it is that people have done, what it is that people have argued, what it is that some great ideals, how they pan out in reality. It's a lab on what it means to be human, right? You see all these experiments and you see the results. So to me, history is like foundational 101 kind of thing in terms of understanding what it means to be human. If you teach it that way. Of course, half of the time it's taught in a way that's just dry and it's just a bunch of dates and names that nobody cares about and it's irrelevant, right? So it's the opposite of that.
Why do we do that? Is it because it's easier?
Yeah, there are a couple of reasons. One, because it's easier. Anybody can do that.
Right,
And
just stick to the numbers.
the other problem is this, is that the part where it gets fun, where really you get a lot out of history, you have to dive deep. You get into specific stories where you get characters in the story. You get what this person did in that occasion and what. When you get that specific, it takes a long time to cover it.
Yeah.
In a classroom, if you have to cover 500 years in 16 weeks, sometimes you feel that you don't have the luxury, that you have to cut the quote-unquote non-essential stuff to focus on the essential, but the essential, it becomes only
It's a total paradox.
the names and the stuff that doesn't matter anymore. So you kind of have to do both, right? You have to keep the big picture so that you can put those tiny stories into a bigger context, but at the same time, without the stories, the bigger context doesn't mean anything, So you have to be able to dive in, get into the specific one, and then get the big picture view again, and go back and forth. What I do with History on Fire, if I spend 8 hours talking about one story, I can't do that in the classroom. I'll have to tell that story in 20 minutes at most.
Yeah.
The 8-hour version is a lot more fun, but we get nowhere in terms of how much material we cover,
It seems like the real value is putting yourself in that person's shoes from 1,000 years ago
Absolutely.
or 3,000 years ago. And then I would imagine what you discover is like, oh, they're like my buddy Billy, or they're like me. They're not. Nothing's really changed.
That's totally how it is, right? That's where it's valuable when you get the first person perspective. As long as you're talking about these abstract forces, this country conquered this one, it doesn't mean anything. There's no relevance. Whereas when you can look at it through somebody's eyes, then it's lively, it's exciting. You can relate, you can understand why it's a big deal. You can all of those things. So I completely agree. That's why I tend to dig. Sometimes I find stories that are really good, but there are no characters in there. There's not enough documentation of real first-person accounts. So they are good in theory, but I can't really tell a story with no characters.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe once I can kind of craft it, but on a regular basis, it's hard. You need to have characters in the tale.
It's almost like we have like a handicap of needing to put a bow on everything.
Right.
Okay, let's summate it and put it together and get all the numbers right. And I think it's kind of like the play conversation. It's like
Right.
the fireworks came before the cannons kind of thing. If you can throw away the idea of okay, how do we have the perfect set and the setting and the mid and the, all the way. Those aren't any real terms, but I think there is a lot of value to be able to throw away all the rules.
Yeah.
And just get into the fucking experience of that person, and see what comes of that.
Definitely. Yeah. Which is why, Hollywood movies about histories do well. Historical fiction as a literary genre does well. History, most students in high school hate history, and for good reasons. And so there's both this love for it and this hatred for it, and they're both perfectly justified. And the love is because when you put yourself into somebody's shoes, you get to see these awesome stories that really speak to you about what it means to be human. But when you're talking about it from just the very bird-eye view of history, it's tedious and it doesn't seem to serve any purpose.
Who stands out for you of leaders or teachers for you in throughout history?
Some of the characters that I'm attracted to are all, I think that says something about where I'm at, but I find that really mildly psychologically deranged individuals tend to fascinate me more than others.
I get really into the axe murderer YouTube videos and like all like, you know, cannibals and shit like that. People that do like really deranged things.
Yeah, no, I don't get quite that. I mean, I do for fun. You know, it's like I did one. You would dig it. I did one story about this this guy known as the Blackout Reaper. He was middle of World War II with the Germans bombing London, and so London, you know, they declare a blackout and to not give them targets, you know.
Was that the Blitz?
Yeah, during that time, and this guy, of course, that gives cover for this guy to start going out and killing a person every single day. And it's a crazy tale. But no, usually I don't go that down. I mean...
Hold on, what was the deal? He was killing someone every single day?
Uh-huh.
Why was he killing someone every day?
Who knows?
That was just his
some
thing.
Kind of compulsion.
That's like me doing hot yoga.
Yeah.
I want to do one hot yoga class every day.
Exactly.
Except for Sundays. I take a break.
Yeah. He didn't... I know, it's wild.
It's like I'm living my life through his eyes.
No, but most of the ones that I dig are stories where I like the character. It's not just some crazy psycho. I like the person, but it's a person who struggles with demons, who's, you know, has kind of a larger-than-life human beings, both in the amazing qualities and stuff that the person has to struggle with, you know. So whether I'm talking about, you know, Crazy Horse or Caravaggio, the Italian painter, or guys like even like Theodore Roosevelt was completely nuts. He was a really interesting guy. I'm doing a series right now about Joan of Arc, which makes no fucking sense because it's like, how do you get a 17-year-old peasant female girl in in the 1400s in France to just come up and say, I'm going to lead an army that's going to kick the English out of France? It's like, there's zero chance in hell of pulling that off, except that she does.
Why? Why does she do that? What's her story? What's like the impetus of getting her?
13-year-old, she started hearing voices. She started seeing these spirits showing up and talking to her and telling her that she was kind of like Star Wars, right? You are my only hope. You know, you are the last hope for the kingdom of France. And, you know, on the surface is poor crazy girl who hears voices and is nuts. Except that what she's able to accomplish should have never been able... There's no logical way to go from that point to what she actually gets done. And yet it happens. And so it kind of makes you go, wait, what just happened there? You know, what? Was she just a crazy girl who got lucky? Or was... What happened there? You know, that seemed like a lot of luck. So, and the funny thing that I enjoy about it is that there is no real answer. There's no way to know, right? And people are desperately trying to make sense of a story that really doesn't make sense, but it's awesome. You know, you have this teenage peasant, illiterate girl who, within 2 years, accomplished insane things before getting captured and burned to death by the English.
It's crazy the balance between insanity and heroism and insight and like we strive to be normal because that's like the safest place.
Sure.
But it's also the most dangerous place because you're going to end up getting screwed if you're normal for too long. You know, if you allow the whispers in your head, if you got them, to come out, that's usually where some of the most largest insights come from too.
And I think that's what I mean by partially mentally deranged, is that like Theodore Roosevelt was nuts. Like he was a nutcase. He accomplished amazing things and he was awesome, but he was a nutcase. Crazy Horse, yeah, you can make, you know, debate about the psychological balance there. And it's also, he ride that line between genius and insanity, much like Caravaggio, the Italian painter, all of these people seem to deal with the same thing.
How is Roosevelt a nutcase?
Roosevelt was funny, man, because the way he grew up super wealthy, but with major asthma at a time when you could die from it.
Yeah.
And so he grew up with the sense that he was probably not going to survive until adulthood.
His dad told him, you got to build your body, son.
Yes, so he was this nerdish, weak guy, upper class, you know, everything that represents the opposite of what he wanted to be. And so he goes out and he starts doing all these crazy hard things and lifting weights and going in nature and doing the boxing and wrestling, doing this, that. And that becomes what he feels is what saves him, right? But then he pushed it a little far sometimes. Some of the things. There's a story that, like, at one point where he's running for president, some guy just walk up to him and shoot him point blank in the chest, right? The bullet goes in, but it travels through the glass case that he had in his pockets and through these 50 pages of handwritten notes that he had. So it still hit him, it still go in his body, but it doesn't go in with the same power that he would have gone. And so everybody thought he's bleeding, he just got shot in the chest. So they're all like, okay, let's take you to the hospital. And he realized, of course, it didn't hit my heart or I would be dead. And then he figured, okay, what other internal organs is there? So he coughed, there's no blood coming out. So he's like, okay, I didn't hit my lungs either. Okay, just a flesh wound. And what the hell are you guys talking about? Hospital, I have a speech to give. And so he walks in with bleeding all over his shirt and gives a 90-minute speech. Because that's what he said he was going to do. Normal people don't do that stuff. That's not a guy who... you can say it's awesome, you can say it's insane, it's somewhere in there, right? It's like, it's a fine line somewhere there, and that's just one example, like his whole life is like that.
Well, that sounds like he's just like a savage dude. Is there any kind of like craziness?
Well,
that could be crazy, I guess, but
some of the mania that induce him to do, like, for example, when he's a young guy, he has it rough. Like, he has, on the same day, his mom dies, and his wife, who just gave birth to their first child, dies. Same day, 2 huge deaths in his life. He freaks out, he goes off to the Dakotas, abandon everything, abandon politics, and he becomes a cowboy, basically, for 2 years. Where he just... And he's clearly running away from his demon, running away from grief, doesn't want to deal with it. So he's dealing with it with denial and immersing himself in action as the way to escape it all. That allows him to do these things that seem, most normal people would not accomplish, but at the same time is a coping strategy, and it's kind of a failing coping strategy. It's not necessarily the healthiest one. So, you see both aspects at play. You see, and that's how he is his whole life. He managed to accomplish amazing things where the odds are really small to pull it off, but they come from this just driving mania to try to run faster than his demons, Do
you ever get the urge to join like the metaphoric American Indians in this life?
What are the metaphoric American Indians?
Just like living out in the woods or traveling and saying screw the whole LA reality, or just packing all your bags into a backpack and saying like, you know what, I don't need any of this shit, I'm out of here.
Right, just get out and do your thing. I think it's a healthy instinct. Now, whether you want to act on it or not and for how long, I think that's a personal judgment call. That's when it's like, yeah, it makes sense for me right now in this life, or no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
But I don't see why it's a bad idea.
It's interesting. You've read Tribes or Tribe?
No, I heard about it. Yeah, I heard about it. I haven't read it yet. Yeah. Totally.
Oh God. So one of the things that you mentioned in there that's been mentioned other places, but is just that the colonials, I think is what you'd call them. They regularly would join the American Indians or Native Americans, whatever the best term is.
It's a better life.
It's a better life, man.
Yeah, it is.
But almost never. I think they say never, but I would imagine it's almost never.
Yeah.
Is it the other way around?
Yep.
Which from our perception is like, dude, we have toilets. We're awesome. Like, what are you doing? Nope.
That's there was a great, I'm sure he quotes it because it's so perfect for his argument, but there's a great Benjamin Franklin quote where it says, no European who has ever tasted savage life can afterwards bear to live within our settlements.
Yeah.
Because it's more fun. It's as simple as that. It's like, it's just a better life in a lot of ways. And I think, in fact, I was having this discussion with my father the other day because he was pushing the line that, quote unquote, progress is a good thing. And I was pushing the line that sometimes it is, not necessarily. You know, it's like, to me, the fact that you are creating some amazing technological things that help the life of a lot of people, that's awesome. The fact that also comes at the price of like half of the people popping antidepressants like there's no tomorrow, I don't know. Is that progress or is it not? Or would it better to just be living in a teepee hunting bison and never creating internet,
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a simple answer. I think it's a complicated answer. And I think oversimplifying it, either romanticizing an ideal past or thinking it's all good in the name of progress, is stupid. I think there's a line there between those two, but it's a fascinating thing. It's like, it's just plain good happiness, living in a small scale tribe, minding your business in nature. If you're happy, do you really need to change? Is there
No, man.
something that say you should be making progress? I'm not sold on that idea.
Yeah,
You know?
it's the hedonic treadmill that we're continually spinning. I was thinking about this morning as I was taking a shower. I pretty much 196% of the time take cold showers. I just do cold. I just don't mess with the
What a
heat
beast.
part. Well, whatever. It's not. It's really not a big deal. Is the thing. Like, it's not a big deal. You know, like, to me, I do that just because it makes me feel better.
Sure.
Like, guarantee fact, if I do a cold shower, I'm going to feel better when I get out.
Right.
I feel kind of I feel fine with hot shower, whatever. But the idea that I was pondering on is that heat that goes into making the shower warm. You pay, it's this fossil fuel. There's all this energy that goes outside of you to make that heat happen. Whereas our bodies evolutionarily, they're built, they feed on us doing that system from the inside.
Right. Yep.
You know, and so that's the progress is
Right.
we're to a high degree is we're outsourcing all these things that naturally run the show inside of our biology. But now we have, some workers in Canada like extracting oil and shipping it down here so that you can work less when you take a shower.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think it's, there are lines, of course, because it's like, okay, if you figure out a way to reduce infant mortality so that half of your kids are not dying before the age of 3, that's a good thing. So I appreciate that part, but I don't appreciate some of the other parts. So I think it's really not a black and white thing. Because, of course, there are ways to make life the way it was 20,000 years ago a lot better. But at the same time, it's not that model is clearly so inferior to other things that have come up later. In some ways, it's really not. In some ways, there's something there that's... it's exactly what you said, right? It's like you got these guys who come from some of the most advanced cultures in the world at the time, who, when they get to try tribal living, they're like, adios. I'm out of here. I'm going to live with these guys because it just speaks to me of what it means to be human so much more.
Yeah.
And I have a better time and I feel more fulfilled.
What do you think you would do for a living if it was 1,000 years ago?
1,000 years ago, hitman.
Wow. That's the legit answer.
Just give me an axe, tell me who to take care of. And
dude, I would be like a jester or a dancer or something. Yeah. You're a motherfucking hitman.
Yeah, just like tell me who to take care of and it shall be done.
That's good. Yeah. Do you ever think about that? I'm reading a book called The Artist's Way. Have you ever heard of this one?
I read it, I think, 1,000,000 years ago.
I bet you have. Yeah, it seems like it would be up your alley. I highly recommend it. Anybody listening, like, por favor, that's a really good book. But one of the things that it does in there that it mentions in there is as like an exercise, gives you these tasks. And one of the tasks is to write out, I think, 5 other professions that you would potentially do, which is just an interesting thought.
Sure, totally.
We're so tunnel vision in what we're doing. Like, this is the way. But it's like, oh man, like, I think it'd be great to be like a Broadway actor.
I've
just
done that
allowing
forever.
yourself to wander that way is cool.
Completely. That stuff I remember in college when I didn't know exactly, how I'm going to make a living. I don't know. And I would make these long lists filled with 10,000 different ideas, even like the most implausible, like stuff that really probably was never going to happen. It's like, yeah, probably I'm not going to open up a ranch and raise bison. That's not going to happen. But I'm still going to write it down because it sounds interesting. Let's see what that means, And I would go through this never-ending list, and then you start striking out the stuff that really you're probably never going to be able to pull off because it's not very realistic. But then you start seeing the range of things of like, yeah, I could do 10 different things and they are as diverse as they could be. You know? Like one thing that I always thought, if I didn't end up teaching or doing podcast or stuff like that, I wanted to, well, I guess it was still teaching, but I wanted to teach martial arts, and I wanted to probably just make a living doing massage.
Really?
Yeah, totally.
Why massage?
Because I was good at it. I had a good touch for it. I was...
what kind of massage?
That's the part where it's like, then I would have to pick what I want to specialize in.
Happy
right?
endings?
Because no, not that part. It's like as much as I'm all,
That's the best part.
as much as I'm all, fully supportive of people who make the world a better place by giving other people orgasms or money.
It's just love.
Still,
it's all love.
yeah, no, I have no judgment against it by no stretch of the. Just that wasn't quite what I envisioned, but it's. But that was one. And so it's like, how different is it from the life I have now? It's pretty damn different.
Yeah.
But I can totally see myself in doing that, and I wouldn't really be a different person. It was just who I am. That too is like all these things that I do are things that I do. There are many things that I am, and so I can channel that in a bunch of ways.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like how you do anything is how you do everything. Mm-hmm. So if you can channel in your skills into one thing, you could probably trust that you would do most of the other things all right.
Yeah. So it's like, or being a hitman.
Or being a hitman.
Yeah.
Is there anything that stands out to you, practices that have been valuable for you over the years, that like a daily practice that keeps your bits together?
I mean, I preach into the choir here, but I think it's like having a physical practice is so essential that otherwise, because I'm so in my head a lot of the times, because I spend so much time reading, so much time doing stuff that's seem purely intellectual, I so badly need the other side of the equation. In my case, it's primarily martial arts, but I love lifting weights. I love doing pull-ups. I love doing, stuff that makes you sweat, stuff that makes you work hard and sweat. I find that one of the key things to mental health. Like, I think there are days where I feel like the pressure boiling, and I'm like, okay, what's going to happen first? Will I be able to get to the gym first, or will I murder somebody first?
Exactly.
Because it's a close race here, and then you get to the gym and you're like, what the hell was I stressing about?
It's amazing how fast it is.
It was all bullshit. It doesn't, it's an issue, but it's not that big of a deal, and suddenly you feel so much better.
Yeah.
And, people think that, you go out and you lift weights or you do something, it's about shaping your body and being healthy. Yeah, that's nice, but it's also about mental health, to me, for even more importantly, first and foremost.
Yeah.
To me, the health or the other things are side benefits.
Yeah, in this playbook, it talks about we have like an abundance or a surplus of neurons that are not actually activated. Like they're not actually, seemingly they're not doing anything. And apparently, from what the playbook, I recommend this book too. It's nice. Apparently, play is one of the highest leverage stimulators of those neurons.
Yep.
So to make those pathways that were kind of just like aimless, wandering, whatever, play somehow seeps into those circuits and gets them to have a function.
Make perfect sense.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Which is why I think, in fact, it's so important for kids to play and have an imagination and develop that. Even more like, who cares whether you learn how to read at 5 or at 8? As you will get it. It's okay. It's like, but there are things where play is key, man. Play is so important. Even as adults, you need to do things that are where you are enjoying, where you're really just letting your mind go in a way that's not strictly functional to achieve a goal constantly all the time, and it's a good feeling. It's like taking a mental vacation.
Yeah, humans have a really long. This is like most all this is just coming out of that book, but we have a really long childhood and adolescence as well.
Yep.
And so a big part of that time frame is just playing, playing tag or wrestling or all that. And it's just a fascinating thing, man. I think we just forget about that.
Absolutely.
We're so focused on getting shit done.
Even like something like, you train jiu-jitsu, right? It's like, realistically, that's play. How many times are you going to use it in life? Because you're going to do it. You're doing an activity that really doesn't serve much of a purpose in terms of accomplishing things.
Right. Your buddy's teabagging you. They're sweaty jockstrap.
Right. Yeah.
Just playing around, bud.
Yeah. Right.
We're all in this together.
Yeah.
Well, how do you incorporate play into your life?
I think a lot of it is martial arts, kind of have that. And then, I'll do that. There will be play with my daughter a lot, right? And this, whether is because we're beating each other up or because you are making up stories together or, that kind of thing. I find it I find it very good, very useful.
Is there anything that stands out that you've learned from your daughter?
I mean, it's funny how it's always that trick of how much is nurture and how much is nature, whether it's because how she was raised or because that's just how she is.
Yeah.
But to me, like, I never treated her the way, I don't treat her as a kid. I treat her as a person who just happened to have a little less experience than I do, or as a little small vocabulary, but that's it, right? Other than that, she's a person. She can relate to the same thing, she understands the same thing if you explain it to her. And it's insane how much having that attitude and relating, like the kind of stuff that she can do at an age where theoretically speaking it should never happen. And it's just because of using the brain in that fashion, and just, and so a bunch of times I really listen to her insight, because she says stuff that is just like, it's not smart for a 9-year-old. It's just smart. Like, I'll take that advice from anybody. If a 50-year-old give me that advice, I'll be like, oh, this is brilliant,
Yeah.
So it's like, and again, I don't think that's, I mean, partially I'm sure it's her nature. Partially I'm sure it's how she grew up. But she does have tremendous insight, and sometimes I do for her, and then I'll be able to help her. But by the same token, the other way around is like I tend to really listen to what she's got to say, because very often it's pretty spot on.
Yeah, it's like pre-filter.
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed that actually recently. I've been really impressed by certain young people, which young is a relative term, but people that I've like 20 years old, 21 years old, like some interesting people in that realm have come into my life in various different ways. And before like 2 months ago, I'd be like, well, we're certainly not going to talk about anything.
Really?
We're not going to.
Why did you think that way?
I just feel ignorantly like they wouldn't have a lot to offer.
Really? I almost have the opposite thing.
Well, now I have the opposite.
If anything,
I'm watching time
I'm
too,
switching in the other direction, because I feel that like.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, please do tell.
No,
Tell me about
you're about to. I'd rather have your insight on it, but I've changed my tune in the last like 2 months.
Yeah, because I think when I was a kid, and 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, whatever, right? Early teens, that kind of thing. All the people I enjoyed hanging around with were older. But by the time I hit college or so, people were about the same age. And afterwards, people were still about college age, because I feel that at that age, when you are an adult, so you have a certain degree of experience and stuff that is not that of a kid. You are an adult, and your thinking is a little different. But you're an adult who's not yet got kicked in the balls by life so many times that you are a beaten dog.
Right.
And there are people who are 90 and they are not, right? They are not beaten dogs anyway. But it gets harder. The percentage of people who still have that spark, that excitement for life, that sense of wonder, that sense of let's go and try, let's experiment,
it's like a medicine.
That drops dramatically with each passing year, by the time, I don't know.
Mine's increased, actually, not to toot my own horn.
No, but that's what I mean, is like, and that's the goal, right? You want to be the exception to the rule, because the rule is not a very good one. The rule is, you look at the average person, they were a lot more interesting when they were 20 than when they are 30, and they are a lot more interesting at 30 than they are at 40,
Right.
It's like, because you just got this sense of being more jaded, you got the sense that now you know what life is like, and this is what you got to put up with, and there's that. I see that a lot. Again, not everybody, of course not everybody.
Yeah.
But I see that so much that the percentage of people with a spark tend to decline with each passing decade dramatically.
Yeah.
So that I find it so much easier, not necessarily that the person who's 20-year-old now in 20 years is going to be amazing. Maybe they will get kicked in the groin by life and they will lose that spark. But right now they have it,
It's about moderation of groin kicks. Because the groin kicks is also what induces the spark.
Definitely, but smaller
Godzilla. It pops the testicle.
Yeah, Godzilla-sized kicks, no good. It's like there's a point where it's like, that's a little too much.
I've found that my imagination and belief of potential has vastly expanded since I was 20.
That's where you want to be. That's exactly what you hope to have in life, right? Because that means, no, you haven't died, you're still alive, and on top of it, you have more experience and more things to draw from. So you got the best of both worlds. Not common, not the most common thing of all.
Because we're sitting in fucking offices.
Right, totally. I mean, it's like you start
never did
taking,
that.
you get some shitty job that you have to do because you need to pay the bills, and so you got to do it. It's not that there's an option. And so you die, your soul dies a little bit every day doing this shit that you really don't want to do, and you're only doing for money, and this is what you got to put up with. And you're trapped in these living conditions that are not really conducive to a healthy body, to being happy, to anything. And, each day that you do that, something of you dies off.
And somehow you're sold the idea that you have to do that.
Well, because in some cases, I'm all for the fact that no, you don't have to. And there are other ways. But being real it's also fucking hard, right? It's not that easy always for people to find a way to make a living without... Like, I was talking with somebody recently, and they're like, I'm trying to do these 10 different things, and 8 are like passion-driven, and I'm trying a way to make money on it. And the 2 I actually make money on are the ones that are not passion-driven, so I keep putting energy in all this direction, and unfailingly, the stuff that actually making me money is the stuff that I hate. And the stuff that I enjoy is making me nothing. And, I mean, right now I don't have that experience, so I'm quite happy. But I can see how even perfectly smart people may struggle figuring out a way to make money with something that makes them happy, It's not a guarantee that it's like, go out and follow your dreams and everything, all the doors are going to open. It's like, maybe not, And so that's where I get it, the fact that some people are like, look, I like to do that, but I'm fucking broke and I need to pay the bills and I need to do what I got to do for my family.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I get it. No, zero judgment about it. Ideally, you want to figure out a way to escape, but if you don't figure it out, I understand. You still got bills to pay.
Yeah, I think I sound like a self-entitled millennial.
Oh, so
people, we're sold the idea that you have to do that. You can just be free.
Well, I mean, I think that's totally important, because if you accept that as this is how life is gonna be, then you can shoot yourself, because it's a shitty life and nothing is ever gonna change.
And then you
right?
perpetuate that reality by
completely.
that acceptance.
So you have to think that no, what you're looking for is freedom, right? What you're looking for is a more fulfilling life. That to me is a precondition to having any possibility of a good life. But once we agree that that's the case, and I completely agree with you there, then we also have to admit that sometimes it's not that easy. And that and it's not just because somebody's stupid or they don't play their cards right. Sometimes you also have to get lucky. Sometimes you have to. So it's like this relentless hustle that eventually, I mean, if I think about how many things I've tried in life to get rid of some slave work and have more time for life as I want to, I've tried 10,000 things, and 9,950 never worked. And I'm actually successful because I actually found a small percentage that did, So my case is like the good case. Hey, it worked out. Yeah, it worked out. At like, how many failures are behind that spot?
Right.
And was there a guarantee that I was ever gonna get there? No, there was no guarantee.
No way.
It just, I play my cards well, and then I also got lucky.
Yeah.
So it's...
Yeah, we got to wrap up. You got things to do.
Speaking of slave work.
No, you're doing the good work. The one thing I wanted to mention with that is there's a bunch of studies around, you've probably seen this, where people, they rig the game for people so that they're going to just crush I think it was Monopoly that they did, but they like crush it. Like, cool, you get like the cool piece, and you start off with all the hotels, and like you have to win. There's no way for you to not win. And then at the end of that, and then they screw other players on the board. And at the end of that, consistently, the people that got offered like the golden ticket, they almost always will end up starting to rationalize why they did such a great job. We're like,
I was so good.
I shuffled that there. It's like, no, bitch. You started off with 6 hotels.
I mean, I'll give you an example, and you're totally right? And so to make that personal, like for me, I've tried a lot of things, right? And like, for example, I'm super happy with my books, but my books never really sold, man. They never really moved the needle for me financially, right? And it's something I'll want to do forever, but, I thought that was the way, writing for me was the thing. Then, however, one of those books led me to be on Rogan podcast. Rogan podcast opened the door to a whole audience. Now, I had nothing there. That didn't translate to book sales. So I started Drunken Taoist as a podcast. That kind of worked okay. It's nice, but still didn't move the needle. And eventually, after trying 27 things, like History on Fire is the one that for me hit big. And it is moving the needle. But I needed to be lucky, because how many times does it happen that just because you wrote a book, you end up on Rogan podcast, and that you click on that day because things work out and you get along, and that leads to this other thing and this other. And so many things in a row have to string out well for that one payoff in the end, which is by no means guaranteed, by the way. So it's a combination, right? You have to play your cards really damn well, and you have to get lucky. Yeah. And sometimes, as you say, we forget the get lucky part. We think it's like, I'm a self-made man, it was all thanks to my hard work and my sheer genius that it all worked out. And it's like, that's an important part. It's not the only one. And in some cases, it's not the one at all. Because as you said, if you got everything handed from day one, you haven't really done shit, So it's funny. But I think that's, at the cost of sounding like a broken record, that's kind of my thing, is like, when put between two choices, it's usually a bit of both. It's rarely this or that. And in this case, of course, talent, hard work, good ideas, of course, they're an important thing. Without that, we don't even begin.
Yeah.
But of course, luck is a big deal. And it's not all about luck, definitely. But you need a little of both,
Yeah.
So if you only got one, you're lucky, but you don't know what to do with it, you're not going to go anywhere.
I like the idea, and then we really have to wrap up. I like the idea of no matter what base you start on, and all that matters is how hard you run. Yep. So you start first, second, home, whatever it is, it doesn't fucking matter. What matters is like, did you do the work while you're in your body, or whatever.
Absolutely.
That's a common thread everybody has. Where should people go to find your stuff? Is History on Fire the main access point, or what's the thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, Google is your friend, right? So it's like, now you just put my name in Google, you'll find books, Drunken Taoist, History on Fire, whatever else shows up. So it's by now it's used to be early on, it was like, this website, this Twitter handle, this thing. It's like, anybody can find that stuff in 2 minutes. So cool.
Thank you, dude.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. More to come, hopefully. Thank you all for tuning in. Pow.
Thank you so much for tuning in to that conversation. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. We got a couple things to help support that body of yours, one of which is the Align band that people have been really loving, which I'm super grateful for. It is a heavy-duty resistance band, comes along with a door anchor, traveling case, and then a online video guide on how to use that thing. It's my absolute go-to travel tool. I've got it hanging literally from my door right beside me now. Use it regularly, use it with clients. It can be found at alignpodcast.com/gear on Amazon. And you can also find it at Align Band on Instagram. Also, we finally did it. We created the Align Method online program, which focuses on unwinding the patterns of staring into technology, essentially. So forward head posture, rolled forward shoulders, rolled forward spine, kind of like just that hunchy posture thing that modern world is stricken by, gets into how to align your physical body. So self-care, joint by joint, from ankle to knee to hip to spine to head to neck, etc. Really good stuff. Also gets into lifestyle, gets into morning routines, nighttime routines, how to effectively handstand, how to move on the ground. People have been loving that. Thank you all for grabbing it, the ones that have. And if people have any questions about that, you can reach out at Align Podcast on Instagram. I'm happy to support. All right. Thank you guys. Enjoy your day. Thanks for doing you. Thanks for telling your friends. Thanks for reviews on iTunes. That's it. Pow.